For USCFootball.com, I'm Jack Smith, joined by Connor Morrissette for instant analysis from USC's 42-20 win over Rutgers in the Coliseum. The Trojans break the three-game losing skid, and they have a get-right game at home against Rutgers, a big win for the program that was desperately needed.
Yeah, I start with the offense after tonight's game. 4 offensive drives in the first half, scoring 4 touchdowns. They only got to third down twice. It was about as dominant as you can get from the offensive side of the ball. And hey, look, Rutgers isn't the greatest opponent, but a USC team that's on a 3-game skid, executing at that level, that was very, very important for this team, and they got it done in that regard. Defensively, were there some issues? Yes, but I mean, USC was desperately undermanned, especially in the secondary, down 4 starters, and Nate Clifton goes out of this game early. I think at one point USC was down 7 starters, and maybe that continued into the second half defensively, so I don't want to give them a total pass, but I felt like obviously the effort defensively was good enough to win. So start with the offense. I thought they were really good. You did what you needed to do against Rutgers, which is important. And now the real test for me comes next week on the road against Washington. USC hasn't won on the road this season. That would show me a lot. Tonight showed me a little bit. They were expected to beat Rutgers. They got the job done. USC's been better at home. If this team really has taken a step forward, then they'll win next week.
I think one of the keys to the offense, at least for me, was knowing Rutgers' body clock, game starting at 11. I thought the tempo was a really big point of emphasis for USC this week. Felt like they were moving faster than they have at any point this season. Maybe that's coming and playing at home, but we certainly didn't see it against Penn State. Definitely felt like USC wanted to put the foot to the floor and run a high-tempo offense, and that's kind of what they did in the first half, and they just rattled off touchdown after touchdown.
And they were getting anything they wanted in this game. And this game was big. We talk about needing elite talent and having impact players like Makai Lemon, a guy who's in his second year, borderline 5-star. He was a very high 4-star kid throughout the recruiting process in every recruiting website, and he comes out, has the 80-yard kick return and then a 70-yard reception. He finishes with 4 catches for 134 yards and the touchdown. He is one of your elite players, and he played like an elite talent tonight. And I remember in the offseason, Jack, we asked Miller Moss who's going to be the number 1 receiver, and he mentioned Makai Lemon, and he certainly looked like the number 1 receiver tonight, whereas Jacoby Lane looked like that top receiver against Wisconsin. It's looked like Deuce Robinson at times. I think going forward here, Makai has found something because he had a career high the previous week, and now he has a new one. Things are really going in the right direction with him. He is the kick returner now. Lincoln Riley said afterwards, we're going to have Makai focus on the kick returning, and we're going to have Zachariah focus on the punt returning, and that looks to be a good move, especially after the 80-yard return tonight. So that stood out to me, too. The offensive line, too, some of the higher-rated recruits that USC has on the line have been sort of up and down this year. I mean, there were no issues, I thought, with the offensive line. They played a really clean game, and that's reassuring against a Rutgers team that doesn't have much of a pass rush. So I felt like the playmakers on offense stepped up. No turnovers. We've seen so many times this year a second-half turnover just kill USC's momentum. There was nothing like that tonight, and that was really encouraging to see. And then defensively, some of the reserves who hadn't played a whole lot this year came in and did well. Cam Fountain, who's a highly ranked recruit, he had a sack. Desmond Stevens came in at the end of the game after not playing a whole lot, but he had a big hit. We saw Prophet Brown, who was sort of up and down, but USC needed its reserves to play well tonight, and for the most part they did.
Yeah, I thought the best reserve was probably Sam Green off the edge. He had his first career sack. He was in the backfield constantly. Him and Cameron Fountain, I think, at one point also combined on a sack. I don't know whether they gave each one of them a half. I have to go back and look at the stat sheet, but Sam Green around the quarterback a lot. I thought the pass rush today was a lot better, and maybe that's because Danton Lynn was sending extra guys, knowing he was undermanned in the back half, and the way USC was going to win was going to be from pressure. But I thought the defensive line stepped up, not only getting to the quarterback, but also holding Rutgers, a rush-first team, to just over 3.5 yards per carry. That was, I thought, a huge defensive performance. Sure, they took their lumps in the passing game at points, and they played a lot of off coverage, but I liked the approach from Danton Lynn, knowing he was undermanned. Let's not let anything over our heads, only one kind of big play allowed, and eventually if we force Rutgers to run as many plays as they had to in this game, we're going to get home to the quarterback, we're going to stuff the run, and I thought USC played pretty well on the defensive end, even though they did give up some big plays.
And you never want to see injuries, of course. Kyle Monungai, Rutgers star running back, leaves the game with what looked like a head injury in the third quarter. Earlier, he hit his head really hard on the turf, so that was sort of the second head injury issue that he had in this game. But Lincoln Riley in the post-game press conference talked about the emphasis of needing to be physical, and Mason Cobb leveled Monungai with his helmet. It didn't really look like the safest hit, but he was very physical on that play, and that limits the star player the rest of the game, and that was, of course, not USC wanting to injure players, but that was a goal, to be really physical in this game, and USC, I thought, did a nice job of that. Greg Schiano, his M.O. is playing that brutal, physical style of defense, and Lincoln Riley told his team all week, hey, we need to match that, we need to be the physical team, and on that Mason Cobb hit, that really stood out to me. And some other guys had big hits. Desmond Stevens had the one that I talked about on the before on the intentional grounding penalty. Gavin Meyer got to Ethan Kaliak-Manis, and he was hammered later in the game on a sack. So I did think that physicality came out tonight, and that hasn't been something that we've seen consistently this season. So definitely another step in the right direction there.
Yeah, I asked Bryson Shaw, I said it felt like everyone chimed in with a big hit, and he said, we need more of that. And then he looked like he was close to another thought that he kept in, and he said, yeah, we just need more of that, that's all I'll say. And it did feel like the defense looked physical. Woody Marks mentioned to us that Lincoln Riley was showing them highlights of past USC teams and playmakers. I don't know if those highlights included Troy Polamalu and Brian Cushing and guys like that, but the defense was trying to fly around, and I thought they looked more violent tonight.
Certainly, they certainly looked more violent, and that's what you want to see, especially when USC is undermanned. And who are some of the guys who are known to be violent hitters? It's Jalen Smith, who's a great tackler. It's Kamari Ramsey, and USC didn't have them tonight, and other players had to step up, and they really did. It was big, too. USC, remember, it was 21-3, and then all of a sudden in the third quarter it was 28-20. Rutgers had some momentum after getting that two-point conversion, and I'll change the topic here for a second. I felt like the defense did well tonight, but then offensively they responded with a really quick touchdown drive after being up 28-20 after the Rutgers touchdown. Mekhi Lemon, I was about to tweet, this USC offensive drive is going to tell me a lot, and then before I got the tweet off, Mekhi Lemon had the 70-yard reception to the 5-yard line, and I think 4 plays later USC got into the end zone. And again, it's Rutgers. They're not a very good team, clearly, but USC's had some issues with closing out not so very good teams this season, and for them to do that here tonight, a small step forward.
Yeah, it feels like Rutgers is about as banged up on the offensive side as USC is on the defensive side, but I thought USC was the group that shook that aside the most, and maybe we could have expected that. Rutgers having to travel 2,431 miles to play a Friday night game at a time where their body clocks feel like it's 11 p.m. at the kickoff. So maybe we could have expected that from Rutgers, but we come back to the words just taking care of business, that USC hasn't been able to do that much this year. It was an encouraging sight to see them be able to come out, win a game that we all said that they should win and shouldn't lose, but they actually came out and did it this week, which you can't say about past weeks this season.
And if you look at the box score, Rutgers did have a good amount of yards, but I watched that UCLA-Rutgers game where Rutgers made it close at the end, but UCLA played much better and won. But I found myself being kind of impressed with Rutgers' offense just because I had heard how poor it was all year, how bad that group was, and they moved the ball against UCLA. They did miss a receiver tonight who had a good game against UCLA who was not available. But I thought that Kaliak-Manis had probably his best game against UCLA and maybe had taken a step forward. And tonight against USC, I mean, he looked lost at some moments, and he had some misses, but he was under pressure a lot. He just did not look like the quarterback I saw against UCLA, so that's another feather in USC's cap. To me, I felt like Rutgers took a step forward offensively, but then tonight, against UCLA, but then tonight they totally did not look like that same team. So yes, USC's defense was undermanned, but they did a good enough job against this Rutgers offense to take them back in time to earlier in the year when I think they only scored like 7 points in a defeat in Big Ten play, only getting to the 20-point mark tonight. That was definitely a check for USC after I thought they took a step forward.
Yeah, it's certainly a big day in Los Angeles sports. Dodgers win Game 1 of the World Series. It wasn't a cool moment for me at least, but it was a cool moment to see all of the fans here know about it before it happened. I'm sitting in the middle of a break, like this video on the scoreboard's cool, but like why are people going this crazy? And then I realized what it was about. But wasn't a huge crowd, but I thought the environment was still good, and even the small groups that were cheering on USC, I thought the Trojans did a good job feeding off of that, and they got off to, I feel like, that start that they've been looking for with the 28 points in the first half, going touchdown every single drive that they had on the offensive side in that first half. I thought that was key because USC has been able to learn from performances this year. I think in that past 3-game losing streak, it's like they had learned to lose those tough games in the end that you'd hope that they can now learn from. We just had a start that was reminiscent of that 2022 season and maybe can try and get back to that form.
It was only the second time this year USC scored a touchdown on its opening drive, so that was, of course, encouraging. And credit to Lincoln Riley tonight. I thought the offensive play calls, especially in the first half, were great. USC was getting whatever it wanted in that first half. The 40-yard completions and Woody Marks rushing for like a 20-yard touchdown untouched. It was easy for USC tonight. And, yes, they have some good players, and Rutgers is down defensively, but it's important for coaches to put guys in the best positions, and I thought Lincoln Riley did a nice job of that tonight as well. Miller Moss did a good job of not turning the ball over and made some plays. He silenced some of his doubters with a 7-yard rushing touchdown, which was good. So finally there's some good juju and some good vibes around this USC team after 3 weeks of heartbreak. Again, I go back to what I said, though, earlier. It's a small step forward. I could see a bigger step forward for this team if they beat Washington on the road. That's a way bigger test than tonight was.
Yeah, of course, a short week this week, which means USC has an extra day to get healthy. If they're able to work their way through that Washington game, you have a full bye week to get extra healthy ahead of the game against Nebraska. So we'll see where the Trojans go from here, but certainly better to sit here and talk about a win for USC, a game where they were clearly the better team, but they didn't allow it to stay close to the end and lose at the last moment. They were in control the whole way, and they end up winning 42-20. But thank you guys so much for watching Instant Analysis. USC wins here in the Coliseum, end the losing streak, and we'll head to Washington next week looking to get back above 500. But for Connor Morrissette, I'm Jack Smith. Thanks for watching. Make sure you check out uscfootball.com for more.